Everyone, I'm here with a video about the Pregnant Empress. So, if you've been watching TarotTube, I've noticed lately that there's been an uptick in people talking about how they don't like the image of the Pregnant Empress. Now, over the years, I think the two cards I've seen people have the most issues with, it isn't the Tower, it isn't the Devil, it isn't Death, it's the Hierophant, and it's the Empress. So I could do a whole separate video about the Hierophant and why people have issues with that, and what my thoughts are on it. But I thought I would do instead, because I've noticed this uptick about issues with the Empress card, and in particular the Pregnant Empress, I thought I'd do a video about that. So this is just my opinion. This is just me talking about my thoughts about it. I would love to hear your thoughts about it as well. But I actually really love a Pregnant Empress. Now, the Empress card does not have to be pregnant for me to like the card, but I have no issue with the Pregnant Empress. And I think it's interesting that a lot of people do have an issue with it. And I think part of that goes back to, in our culture, there is a lot of issues around mothering and motherhood. And the Empress represents sort of the archetype of the mother in all of her power. So it is a feminine archetype. It is an archetype of the goddess. It's an archetype of motherhood and mothering and what that means. And to be clear, that archetype exists in all of us, whether we're male or female. Like, it just does. Just like, I'm female, but the Emperor archetype lives in me too. So these archetypes exist in all of us, no matter what. But there is a lot of really crappy messaging around motherhood and pregnancy, and about like those archetypes in our society. So no wonder people have issues with the Empress. So I have here from the Mythic Tarot, I have the Empress. We have a beautiful Pregnant Empress here. You can see she's got all sorts of flowers and things on her dress. She's got a beautiful crown here that has like a city on it. We've got here sheaves of wheat. It's this field with an abundance of flowers in it. We've got the beautiful waterfall and the lush green hills. Like, this is an image of Demeter in Greek mythology, or Ceres in Roman mythology. Same person, different name. An image of her which represents Mother Earth, which represents the fertility of all of life, which represents the fertility of motherhood and the feminine archetype. And so to me, this is very much a great image of what that means. And to me, that pregnancy really represents that fertility, that ability to give birth to not only human beings, but also to ideas, to creative things, to businesses, to the earth being creative and fertile, to all of those things. And again, that archetype exists within all of us, whether or not we've ever given birth to a baby, or whether or not we're male or female. So I think that the pregnancy is like a really apt metaphor. I think it is a really good image of that particular archetype. But I also understand why people sometimes have a reaction to this. Because, like I said, there is a lot of really crappy messages around motherhood and what that means in our society. So on one hand, we have kind of the stereotypical kind of message that's been sent to us over the years about, like, how mothers have to be perfect, whatever that means. And that changes from, like, decade to decade, what that means. Mothers have to be perfect. There's this idea of, like, once you're a mother, you're not sexual anymore, or you're not desirable. There's messages around how mothers just exist to serve others, like, just really like terrible messages that aren't realistic and that no one can live up to, because women are human beings like everyone else, and can't live up to those perfect ideals that advertisers and the media is selling us. So people look at this and they often have issues. And also, people have issues with their own mothers. People project a lot of things onto their mothers. Again, mothers aren't perfect. Some people had truly awful mothers. And so when they see that image, it brings up all of those kind of feelings about, the stereotypes around motherhood and what it means to be a mother. It might be anger towards your mother, or towards the messaging around mothering and motherhood that this particular card can often bring up for people. Now, I see the Empress as being the archetype of motherhood and fertility in all of its power. So, not that watered down version of what that means, not that subservient version, not those, commercial messages that have been sent to us. To me, like, she is fertility and abundance and creativity. And she represents the power of Mother Nature, which can be gentle and loving, but also fierce and terrible, but also very protective, all of those things. And to me, the Empress also represents all four queens in the tarot deck. So she represents, Air, the Queen of Swords, which is the mother or the woman, the feminine archetype that is strong, that sets boundaries, that is smart, that is wise, that has experienced things and knows where her boundaries are. She also represents the Queen of Cups, the water archetype for the feminine, that is very much about psychic knowing, intuition, empathy, emotions, also inspiration as well, that deep well of spirituality and connection with others. She also represents the Queen of Pentacles, which is the earthy archetype of the feminine. And that is the nurturer, the provider, but also the person who's organized, who's on top of things, who's the leader, and somebody who's fiercely protective as well. And then we have the Queen of Wands, which is the fiery energy, the queen I identify with. This is the feminine that is creative. This is the feminine that is a leader, very powerful. This is the woman who's not afraid to take up space or to be loud. This is somebody that's very fierce as well and a warrior. And all of these things are all together in the Empress. And that is an archetype that, I think in our society, we don't often view the feminine in all of its power. And again, that exists in all of us, no matter whether we're male or female, exists in all of us. And that power. And so I think that, again, there's a lot of really bad messaging around what that means, the feminine archetype, also the archetype of the mother, that tends to water down or take away the power of the feminine and the power of this archetype. And we see that messaging in right now, there's a lot of really extreme voices in the room. Like if you go online, there is such extremes. And the extreme voices tend to get more attention. They tend to be louder. And we have, on one side, we have this extreme messaging towards women that tells women, especially tells mothers, that all they are vessels to give birth to babies, and their job is to nurture, to be a servant to others, and doesn't want to see women in all of its power and all of its strength. It just wants women to be in the background and serve. And that is a really watered down version of the Queen of Cups and Queen of Pentacles archetype, the water and earth archetypes. It waters it down, so it's like it doesn't want to see women as being spiritually powerful, as being inspired. It doesn't want to see women as being, in charge of things or managing things or being fiercely protective. It only wants to see women as servile and servants. And so people see the pregnant empress, and it is, I think, sometimes a reaction to that messaging that doesn't want to recognize women in their power, that only wants to see women as sort of like reproductive vessels. And then we have other extreme voices that tell women that to reject that entirely, to reject the feminine archetype, to reject femininity, to reject any, sort of reference to that, because it's like a reaction to that other extreme message. And that is a watered down version of this, the Queen of Swords. So that, see this messaging, and it's so sad. I've seen so many young women, particularly, again, TikTok is very bad for extreme polarizing messages, I find, that are ashamed of being women. Like they don't want to own that label. They don't want to be called that. I see young women who say that it's an insult to be called a woman, that being a woman is infantilizing. And that is really troubling, because that is very much like internalized misogyny. But I think a part of that is like a reaction to not wanting to be seen as servile or seen as just reproductive vessels. And that, like it also, like, people want to be, a lot of women, we want to be honored for our intellect, for our wisdom as well. And so I think that that extreme reaction is also a reaction in that way. And then we have in more extreme messaging that we've all seen with a watering down of the Queen of Wands, where it only views women as sexual objects, or only views women as, trophies. They're supposed to look good and take up space as far as like the way they look, but it doesn't want to honor their creativity. It doesn't want to honor their personality. It doesn't want to honor them as in the wholeness of what they are. So with all of these like just bad messages we see in the world towards the feminine, towards what it means to be a woman, towards motherhood and what that means, it's no wonder people have a bad reaction to the image of the pregnant empress. So I've also seen like some really bad messaging towards motherhood as well. So again, we have these extreme messages of like, once you have a baby, you're not sexy anymore, or you're just a servant, to another extreme message where I see people calling women who are mothers, who've chosen to be mothers, calling them breeders, telling them that they have given up on themselves, that they are less than, and I think that's also a really terrible message. So again, with all of these messages out in the world about what it means when it comes to the feminine and what it means to motherhood, it's no wonder people look at the pregnant empress and they have a reaction to it, because they don't want the feminine archetype to be seen as either servile, or to be seen as not powerful, to be seen as not sexual, to be seen as not creative. And the empress is all of those things. The empress is, again, the feminine archetype in all of its fullness and all of its power and all of its ability to create and bring life into the world. Again, not just on a physical level, like an actual baby, but also in any creative way. And again, that is something that, all of us can do. Now, like, I personally have never been pregnant. I've never had a baby. I do have 2 stepkids who I love very much, but all of us have the ability to create things. And so I think that this is a really good metaphor. Like, it doesn't mean to be fully feminine, you have to be pregnant or a mother or any of those things. I totally don't believe that. But I think that the image of the pregnant empress is one that really, I think, is a great metaphor for that kind of energy and that ability that, again, we all have, whether or not we've had a baby, whether or not we're male or female, we all have this energy. So I actually really love me a pregnant empress. I think that it is a very apt image. Again, I don't think every empress in every deck needs to be pregnant, but, I like to see me a nice pregnant empress. I'm totally fine with it. But I also kind of understand why people have a reaction to the pregnant empress when we have such like crappy messaging around the feminine archetype and what it means to be feminine and what it means to be a mother. And not just like a mother in the actual physical sense, but also in the metaphoric sense, because we can all be mothers in our own way. Like, we can raise a child, we can raise an animal, we can take care of, our business, we can take care of creative projects. Those are all aspects of mothering, along with, the actual physical act of having a baby and, raising a baby. So that's my thoughts on the pregnant empress. I know not everyone's going to agree with me. Might even be a bit controversial. Let me know what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts around the bad messaging around femininity and motherhood and all that stuff? What are your thoughts about the pregnant empress? Do you hate the pregnant empress? Do you love a pregnant empress? Do you not care at all? Let me know what you think. As long as the opinions are respectful, that's totally fine. You can disagree with me. If there's any like swearing or anything weird like that, or name calling, I will delete it. Or if you call anyone else names, I'll delete it, because I don't put up with that. But anyway, those are my thoughts about the empress and why I love a pregnant empress and just the empress in general. So let me know your thoughts. Again, thank you so much for watching, and thanks to my patrons. You guys are like absolutely the best and allow me to do this stuff. And as always, peace and love and rock.